What's up, guys? So, if you've made this far, congrats. And we are going to finish up this video series by writing tests for our sagas. And I'll also talk about how we can approach testing with sagas. Cool. So, looking into the documentation of Redux Saga, there are two main ways to go about testing your sagas. So, we already know that sagas make asynchronous code really easy to test and write it down. And if you look at this sample saga that they have in the documentation here, so it actually waits for an action of choose color and then it dispatches a particular action. So since this is a generator function, so every time we'll actually invoke this generator, we will get back the type of object that was either taken here or dispatched. And since we already know that the effects from Redux Saga, they themselves only return an object, so that means that it makes really easy to make assertions on these objects. So for example, we can just take the next value out of this generator. So for example, if we just invoke this generator function here, change color saga, and we make an assertion on the next value here, so we can just pass in our take effect with this choose color effect here, choose color action here, and it will match because again take returns as an object which the Redux Saga middleware works upon. So it makes like these assertions really simple. So we can make our next assertion saying that the next of this iterator gave us back the dispatch action with put effect of change UI color. So like one thing here is that we are actually, you might have noticed, we are actually testing each and every statement here. So kind of we are like diving into testing implementation details, like which is not really a good way of writing tests because these will make them brittle. Because if we had, for example, say another yield statement here, or maybe we are doing something here also like after we take this choose color effect, it would have broken our test. And like besides these, like if we were to move this for example say into some new block or move around things here and there, it would also break our test. So at times it might be needed, but usually like you don't want your test to be so brittle. So Redux Saga, like again, they also recommend another approach of testing the saga, which is that we kind of make assertions on the dispatched actions. So we create a fake store and then we dispatch actions on that. And like after our saga has finished its execution, we will then make assertions based on what actions were dispatched. So let's dive into this and get into writing tests. So we want our test to be co-located. So I'm going to create a folder here called __ tests. Yep. And let's say we want to test our images saga first. So I'll create a folder for a file for images saga.js. And here we want to do our tests here. Cool. So let's look into our saga and see what we can test. So let's take this function here first, our selector function of get page. And since we want to test it, I'll also have to export it. So I'll just do export const get page. And now if I go into my tests, I'll be able to import it. So I'll just import it from import get page from / images saga. And now we want to test this selector function. So let's say test selector gives back the page. Pretty simple test to just to get started. And let's say we have our next page as 1, and let's say we have our state const state as next page. So it's an object right now, and we want to take the result, that is we want to pass our state into this function, selector function, and then we expect that the result that we get back, it should be equal to the next page itself. Very simple, right? So I'll just give that a save, and I also have this extension installed for just test, so you can find that, or I'll just run my tests here in the terminal. Cool, so all our tests is passing. So we only wrote our first test here, and now we'll be writing the second test for our images saga. Cool, so let's start this like this. Test. Yeah, so we want to say, like test that our saga, like it should load images and handle them in case of success. Cool. So when we work with a saga, so we'll be testing our handle images load saga here. So let's also export this so we can test it. I'll export this, and I'm going to import it here, handle images load. And now we want to make assertions based on the dispatched actions. So I want to create an array of dispatched actions, and initially it would be empty. And next we want to make assertions on a fake store. So the way to do that is that we import run saga from Redux Saga, and like they have in the example here, we want to pass in certain options to our fake store here, and any other so first parameter is supposed to be the options for a store. So in this case we'll pass in the dispatch, the get state, and followed by the saga that we are testing, and any parameters that saga needs. Cool. So we are going to create a fake store. So const fake store, and let's say we have the get state to return us the next page, and let's say our next page is 1, just for testing purposes. And whenever we do a dispatch, so then it dispatches the action and it pushes that action into the dispatched actions array, which we have here. So whenever an action is dispatched on our fake store, we want it to be pushed into this array, and then later we'll make assertions on this array. And like how we can wait for the saga to finish is by doing await. And before I do that, I'll just make this an async function. So now I can do await here. So I'll just await for run saga, and first parameter is my fake store, which provides the get state and dispatch. And then I want to test my handle images load saga, and I want to await till it's done. So this is the key here, that we want the saga to be finished. And now we can make assertions on our data. So let's log the dispatch actions into the console and see what we get here. Cool. So we're getting in the dispatch actions images load success, and we also have the images here. And one thing that is happening here, that like we are doing an actual API call in our test. So like this is not a really good way of doing the test, because these will slow down our tests and also make them brittle, because we don't really want to hit the server while doing unit tests. So let's mock this API call that we have in our handle images load. So we are using the fetch images API. So we can mock this using just mock functions. So mock functions are a really good way of testing things, and we don't want to like depend too much on mock functions, because at times you might have like too much mocking going on and you're like not doing tests properly. But like for API calls, it makes good sense to mock these. And you can go over more details about mock functions in the just documentations. It's a really good read. And let's mock our API call. So in order to do that, I'll just import star as API from // API. So this will give me back all the exports from this, and I'll have access to fetch images in that also. So why I'm using this asterisk here is because I want to mutate the exported module from API. And how I can do that is using just mock function. So like after my dispatch actions, I can say that my API.fetch images, which is the API call that is used by handle images load here when we do the call effect, and we want to mock it. So I'll just say that it's a just mock function. So just.fn, and it resolves a promise and gives us back some mocked images. And now let's say we have some mocked images here, mocked images, and I'll just write some ABC div. And now this fetch images call won't be an actual call now. It would be a mock function call, and it would always resolve to this. So this makes assertions way simpler, and we are not doing any API call now on a test. So if I hit save, and we can see that in the dispatch actions, our images loaded were actually ABC and div. So we didn't do an API call on the server in our test. So that's like one thing to note. Also, we are mutating this fetch images in our test, and one thing that happens when we do this is we kind of mutate the entire module that was exported here. So usually what we want to do is after a test has finished execution, we want to revert this back to the exported module so that it doesn't affect other tests. But here, just for brevity, I'll just keep this here. But yeah, that's one point to note about this. And after our saga has finished, so now we can make assertions. So let's say we make expect, and we expect that our API.fetch images.mock. So every mock function has this mock property, which holds a variety of useful information, and .calls.length. So this value would give us back the number of times this mock function was invoked, and if our saga ran properly, it should have been called only once, so it should be 1. So if I give that a save, yeah, so our tests are passing. And now we can also do one more assertion, that our dispatched actions actually contain equal. So they actually contain the set images action. And in order to do that, I can just import set images from my actions // actions. And yeah, so we want to assert that this action was dispatched, and we can have more granular assertions in a way that we are making assertions in a sequence, like starting from the first element in the array of dispatched actions, but here we can just assert that it contains this value. So set images, and it has this action. So this action was supposed to be dispatched. So if I hit save, yeah, so a test is passing. And just to test if it's working, I'll just say that it expects not to contain. And yeah, so now our test failed. So we can see like the difference here. So I'll just change it back to contain equal. Cool. So now we just tested that our images are loaded successfully. And we can have a similar way of testing if our Saga is able to handle errors properly. So I'll just copy down this test here. And now we want to test that our Saga, it should handle errors in case of fail. So again, a similar set of workflow. So we want to make assertions on our dispatch actions, and one thing that would change here is that now we want our fetch images call that is in our Saga to throw an error. So if I throw an error inside this try block, then it would invoke the catch block here, and we would then set an error into the state. So we want to make assertions and see if the error was actually set into the state. So yeah, get state like doesn't change much, we don't need it to change, and we want to push the action to here. And one thing we have to change though is that we want this fetch images to throw an error. So we can do that by using promise.reject. So we are mocking the implementation of this API call right now, and we want it to reject the promise. So when we reject the promise, so in our Saga we take an error object, and we can check this by, for example, I'll just have an error string here and see if it's working. So I'll say like some error is thrown, and I want to my mock function to reject it with this value. Cool. So again, we'll then wait for the Saga to finish execution, and we want the fetch images, it should have been invoked only once, and then we can expect that the dispatch actions contain the error. So if you want to make assertion on the error, so we can then import our set error action, and here in our test we can assert that it contained the set error action object and pass in the error that we are simulating here, this one. So if I give that a save, so cool. So now both my tests are passing. So we just tested that our Saga is able to load images properly, and it's able to catch the errors properly. And so you can see like it was pretty simple to test our Sagas. So this is like one more thing I really like about Sagas. And now the next thing going forth, you can test the stat Saga also, and I'm not going to do that here, so I'll leave that as an exercise for you if you guys are feeling courageous, and give that a try. And if you get stuck anywhere, we have the test here at the repo on wtjs for the splash, so you can go into the test directory and check what you come up in the stat Saga. Oops, I think I misspelled it to stat sage, but yeah, you can test it here and compare your tests with the ones that we have here. Cool guys, so that brings us to the end of this series, and we hope that you liked it, and we'll be working on delivering more awesome content. And if you have any problems, like feel free to reach out to my friend Deepak Grover. So he's on Twitter by the handle @metagrover, or you can reach out to me on Twitter @divyanshu013. So yeah, that was about it. And if you like this series, please subscribe to this channel. We'll be working on some more awesome content in the future, and we already have one more series if you guys already don't know about that. So it's called Building a React Tooltip Library. And yeah, that's about it, guys. See you. Take care.